And we're live. Welcome to the Best in Slot podcast, a Warcraft podcast by the community for the community. I'm your main host, Sparty. I'm here with my co-host, Midgettes, and our special guest, Sloot. How are you guys? How are you, Midgettes and Sloot?
Sloot first, because he's our special guest.
Well, there we go.
I'm doing fantastic and certainly not stressed with the game I just played.
Yeah, good day of streaming.
Not at all, right?
Sorry?
Good day of streaming.
Yeah, it was good. It's good. It's good to be back. Lots to do for WoW. I almost feel guilty logging off of WoW to do another game now because it's just so hyped, but it's not really that much to do just yet on live.
That's a thing, and I'm sure we're going to cover that. There's a lot of downtime and a lot of things to do, but yeah, a lot of fun stuff. Cool. Well, welcome, guys. This is episode 35. Today we'll be talking about a number of different Warcraft topics, from new patches to the MDIs to those, first few weeks progression in the raid team and really the last couple of weeks of the expansion. But we do have the best segment of this podcast, which is a joke of the week.
Yeah, but only if Sloot's going to be the one telling it, because your jokes suck.
What?
I mean, I don't have any jokes.
You don't have any dad jokes? Come on, Sloot. You did all the puns at the MDIs. You have to be better than Sparty.
I mean, all right, Sparty goes first.
Okay. All right. See, I'm lucky enough to prep these, right? And like whenever I go to job interviews or whatever, you need to have a joke ready to go. So I found one for today from my my daily joke calendar. A lot of cleaning here at my house today, and I recently decided to sell my vacuum cleaner, as all it was doing was gathering dust.
Good one. I like it. Cringe
You
level
like
is high. I mean, you can't not
actually-
like that.
Why not? I can think of a lot of reasons not to like it. I was hoping you were going to have a better one.
The thing is, it's a successful dad joke if it makes you angry. That's the point. It's meant to make you laugh in frustration.
That's awesome. All right. Well.
Alrighty. Well, then moving on, since he doesn't share the same views.
Have you seen me cast the MDI?
Yes, actually,
That
the reason I
beautiful
watched
glowing-
him.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Really?
That's all it is.
Yeah. It's just jokes, right? Like we're waiting. When's the next pun? When's the next joke?
It's just dad joke and pun after pun.
Too much puns? Too much fun? Something like that. I don't know. Why don't you start, Sparty? I don't know what to say now.
Well, I mean, there's stuff happening in Warcraft, sort of. I mean, the whole World of Warcraft base game has been removed, right? So now the subscription includes all level 110 content, which includes Legion. Awesome, saves everybody what, $5-10. Maybe we'll get some new people in here. I don't know. I mean, it's okay.
Sloot's new here? Say hello?
I don't know how that
Twitch.
works.
Yeah, because you've been here before.
Oh,
I've been here and I've subbed
Hello.
a few times. So I'm not really sure what's up. But anyways,
But you're new here. Well, yes,
Hey,
and
guys.
they did make it so that basically you don't have the war chest anymore, and you can basically just start leveling to the current content and then buy BFA. And there's 2 different levels. So it's a nice change. It's an expected change. Nobody wants to buy 5 packs before they can play.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had the battle chest before, which I guess it all came together. And, I found some old, when I went to Poland and I played, I played a summer there back in Burning Crusade. I found an old copy, like an EU copy of the game. Paid $60 for. I haven't opened it yet. Yeah. Too expensive.
I mean, it had to happen at some point, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, how many more expansions were they going to go before they need to be like, okay, you need to buy the previous 14 expansions and then you can play, it just starts to get ridiculous. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So did everybody go and open their Mythic caches? Because I don't do Mythic Plus. I just so we're real clear on this. So I finally got to open a chest.
And?
I got stuff I didn't want. I got another keystone. But I also got some essences. It was great.
hey, it's like 1K, isn't it?
Yeah,
Very
it's enough to buy a legendary for every 10.
Yeah,
And you can target your legendaries now.
that's right. For
Which
whatever
is
else
good.
you have. I mean, at this
Yeah.
point, they're like little
many
welfare
alts do you-
legendaries.
Welfare legendaries. How many else do you have, Sloot?
Overall in EU, I have 7 110s, and on NA, I just have the 1. I mean, it's always going to be the 6 tanks, and then I kind of had a craving, and to be honest, I really much did enjoy it. A Shadow Priest, would have thunk, but just for fun. So those are my EU tunes. Then I saw the Blood DK on live on NA.
I can't see you as a Shadow Priest. No way.
It's fun. It's just a nice change of pace, once in a while.
Yeah,
It's
I get
fun
that
to do
too.
those dungeons and watch somebody else, tank and be like,
Suffer.
well, I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, well, I don't care.
Oh, it's
Look,
skittish
somebody
week.
pulled
Yeah, I
out
got
trash
DPS
bucket.
this
It was
week.
me. You tank it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun once in a while.
Take paybacks. Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, sure. Get some, he gives some.
So you haven't done any rating since the patch? That's
Well,
your
I mean,
retailer?
pre-patch just hit. It's this. We're still on the same reset that pre-patch hit, right? So don't forget EU resets on Wednesdays.
Yep.
So we still have Monday, Tuesday to raid. And we're raiding tomorrow, so we'll see. We were supposed to raid Thursday. First of all, we usually raid Wednesdays. We said, okay, look, we're all experienced enough to know what happens on Wednesday patches usually on patch day. So screw it, let's go Thursday. And it was so bad, and probably still is, in terms of tuning and people complaining, that we're like, screw it, let's just push it back to Monday, let people get their UIs, let add-ons get updated.
Yeah.
And we raid tomorrow, and I'm still hearing nightmares about stuff, so I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll see.
There's been quite a few. I mean, the tuning issues were completely off. 11 out of 11 mythic guilds can't clear heroic dogs because it's so poorly tuned. Like just heroic dogs itself. A lot of the raids are off. I was doing a mount run the other day in Firelands, and the lava is just obliterating me. It's two-shotting me. We were trying to do Gul'dan sales, and like we couldn't finish a Gul'dan sale. Like it was ridiculous. Like the stuff is just way overtuned, and I wish we had people to test that stuff. But it might cost us a raid tier.
Well, it already cost us tiers, period. But they got the raids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. That kind of stuff always boggles my mind. I mean, we've had, one more squish before this, right? With Warlords. Yeah. And things were pretty broken then, too. I guess, I mean, there's just so much stuff that they're going to miss it. It's just, I guess what's questionable is the fact that this is what they missed, Going into Firelands to like farm some transmog or whatever.
That's different. Yeah, I mean it's
they might miss a couple of things, but like the current raid, the last 3-4 resets before the expansion comes out, people desperately trying to get their last mounts, do some sales, and then can't do it. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean it's most recent content too, and it's some things are going to get missed. For instance, for those of you that are Mists of Pandaria players, if you guys remember the restorative embers that just that you used for the mana restore, health restore, they actually didn't get scaled back, so they'll restore your health and mana in 10 seconds, in case you want to use them in raids for whatever reason instead of potions. So it's a nice little thing they've missed, which I'm sure will get hotfixed soon. But yeah, like that kind of stuff, fine, miss it. But Gul'dan's a big deal. The tuning of the current raid, even though it's the last couple of weeks, that's a pretty big deal too. That being said, go ahead.
No, did Gul'dan get nerfed? Because I'm just reading chat. Like, was it fixed in the end?
Yeah, so we did it on Tuesday, Wednesday. As far as I know, it did get nerfed. But yeah, I mean, lots of little things. Yeah, Ariana says Dark Moon deck and Rets were using it and abusing it, so we're Death Knights. Yeah, those are fun times.
That was a short thing. And I guess about 70% of the people that had killed Argus were unable to this week. So there's a lot of
Mythic.
Yes, Mythic.
Yeah. Well, they had to nerf his Scythe too, 30%.
Yeah, that Scythe was obliterating.
Quite rough afterwards. Yeah.
Right, but it was
Tally, what did you do?
Tally, you're gonna have
poor Tally was the tanks were getting yelled at. Let me tell you, on every team, the tanks were getting yelled at. So be prepared, Sloot. But yeah, there's a lot.
I can't yell at myself. I'm the raid leader. I'll just blame someone else.
Who do you blame?
The healers, obviously, right?
I mean, to be fair, if I screw up, I say it's my fault for sure. But usually the healers.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I remember doing Chimeron years ago, and I'm tanking this bastard, and I keep dying, and I'm yelling at the healers. I'm like, what the hell? Just keep me topped off for the second hit of Chimeron. And then they finally say, hey, Sparty, you're still tanking in healing gear. And that was a big oopsie.
Like Chimeron, like Blackwing Descent?
Yeah, Blackwing Descent.
Dude, once I saw Fetid Devourer and his like putrid garbage room and stuff, I had complete flashbacks to that fight. It was the same thing, like toxic smoke and heavy hitting boss on the tanks, etc.
Oh man. But yeah, I mean, lots of impacts there. GCD is another impact that people are getting used to as well. That's a rough one. And for people that haven't played too much beta, getting used to your cooldowns, for instance, doing Agrimar again, and I'm trying to pop wings and then my aura. Totally missed my aura because I thought it would be everything would be off the GCD, and of course we wiped. Fun times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I hate that GCD stuff.
Yeah, we
It's
talked
like,
about it a little bit at the at PAX, and I know
mhm.
they have their own philosophies in terms of what they want to do in terms of, well, let's potentially get rid of all cooldowns, make things a little bit more meaningful, and yeah, to an extent, but it feels so sluggish sometimes. And with Holy Paladins, there would be such good flow. Now, I don't know. It's really slow.
I mean, there's some things like I don't want to say I'm on board with it, but like I'll tough pill to swallow, but I'll deal with it. Putting
Yeah.
like 2-3 minute CDs on GCD, fine, it's annoying. Yes, now you have to like queue sometimes 2 or 3 spells on top of your CD. Fine, it's shitty. No one likes it, especially if like you pop your first CD and then God forbid something goes wrong, you have to do a quick heal and then you know what I mean. Um, but where I drew the line is they kind of had that first philosophy where they put all the GCD things that they wanted, wings and 3 minute CDs and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. And then they took it a step further for the second round when they added all those really questionable ones, self heals for tanks, charge, death grip, infernal strike, the leap for vengeance, demon hunters, disengage for hunters at one point. And it was kind of like, you know, you draw a hard line at that point because that's really impactful on gameplay. That's not like a 2 minute CD that's an inconvenience. That's like a rotational thing almost.
Oh, for
And
sure.
it's just kind of silly. They took a bunch of them back for various reasons, but they still left. My biggest gripe is still the tank healing one. And I just don't. The thing is, and I've listened to what Ian said and I've read the blog posts and, I try to think from Blizzard's perspective too. And I just can't find like the tank self healing GCD, for instance. There's nothing that aligns with their mentality or philosophy as to why they would do that. And then they just for months, there's not a single tank I've talked to that likes this in any way on any of the classes, even classes that weren't affected by this, like Monk and DK. They're still like, why would they do this? This is so stupid. And then just never said anything. They just never responded. It's been asked a million times. It's been reported in forums. There's been pages of good constructive feedback like they like, and it was just never answered, which leads me to believe that they don't have a response that anybody would like. The answer probably literally is we just want to slow it down, and nobody's going to like that answer, so they're choosing to kind of ignore it, because why else would they not say anything? And I find that sometimes they do that, and people kind of mistake Blizzard for not listening or not taking feedback into account. What I can tell you is that they always do. I mean, I know enough people at Blizzard and how it works internally. They read everything. They know everything. The stuff they don't respond on, who knows why, right? It could be because they know that you're going to be pissed at their response, or they don't have a good answer for you, or whatever. And it just felt like one of those times, and it was definitely a bit frustrating.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to really explain the philosophy behind some of the decisions. I mean, people may not have that background, right? Whether it be in game design or whatever, to understand why some of those decisions are being made, and whatever answer you give them, they're going to be unhappy. So I guess they've decided to sometimes just not answer, and still going to be unhappy.
Well, what do you think about the personal loot? Moving from the GCD to the personal loot, where do you go with that?
I mean, I think. I don't think this is such a bad change. I don't fully support it. I think it's one of those things that fixes some problems and then creates other problems. Certainly it creates problems. Okay, the problems that I don't care that it creates are things like, oh, now I can't let's be honest. There's people who did like RMTs that are pissed about this now. Just sorry.
And for those of you unaware, that's real money trading. So people would sell runs for cash or whatever, and they're upset about that, and that's a whatever. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. To be fair, it does affect gold sales, right? I mean, there's some guilds obviously that sell like, hey, Master Looter, we're going to give you loot, so that's kind of a problem. So it does create problems there. It does create problems with the biggest gripe I have, and you know Sparty as well, is in terms of competitive rating. It doesn't matter if it's super hardcore or just mid-tier or a bit more casual, whatever it may be. The problem is if I can't during progression, let's just use Antorus as an example, right? In Antorus, if the trinket from Kilrog from oh my god, what's his name? Big dude. Kingaroth.
Kilrog. Yes, the acid thing for
the injector.
Yeah.
The catalyst. If it were progression right now, and it would be forced personal loot, and let's just say that trinket is substantially better for warlocks, and we need to use warlocks for Argus, whatever it may be.
Yeah, for the next boss. Yeah.
And that trinket drops for some mage that maybe we don't even plan on using on Argus. Maybe we just brought a bunch of mages on Kingaroth because they're super good. theoretically, let's just say. And then the mage gets the trinket that some alt mage that we'll never use again because the guy's main's a warrior, and that trinket's just gone. And we can't constructively and strategically give that trinket to our best player or our best warlock or the guy we know is going to be an Argus, and that's a huge disadvantage versus, let's say, some other guild that got lucky and got like 2 injectors on 2 of their main warlocks. So that's a really big problem because it very heavily affects your gearing strategy as a guild going into progression, and that's a problem. So that is a huge no-no in my books for this change. But there are positives to the change too, in my opinion. I do buy what Blizzard's saying with the whole social thing, no more ninjaing loot and stuff like that and getting kicked out of raids. I can't say it's something I experienced because I'm in a structured guild and
Yep.
I guess streamer benefits and that kind of stuff, but I'm sure it happens with the millions of players in the game and whatnot. But the one big advantage that people don't really seem to realize is that this change actually substantially helps balance and tune mythic progression, because the variance in guild and player power of the guilds going into progression just went from method up here and whatever a guild here to something like that. Because before it was, well, what do we tune around method? Who's going crazy? Do we tune around this guild? Will this guild ever kill it if we tune around method being able to kill it first week?
Mhm.
And you guys see all the time that's how it was in progression. Guilds would get there and be like, this is impossible.
And then
How
you
did
nerf
method
it.
do this? Well, method did it because that eight clears worth of loot fed into their mains, right?
Mhm.
And obviously they're good players. But now the gap that they need to kind of tune things around is much smaller, because the variance and like wild swings in player power between guys who are doing 8-9 splits for gear and guys who aren't even at all is not nearly as big. So it's easier to tune. So as a result, you can hope at least to get some more quality encounters in terms of tuning and not have, Xavier's V2, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. I mean, that little threshold of, and then that variance of tuning is that much smaller, right? So it's easier to balance those encounters potentially. With the comment that you made about things being ninja'd, well, a lot of that was fixed through just guildmaster loot, right? And having 80% of the group being from one guild, because in the past people would do a run, whatever Wrath of Lich King GDKP runs, and they would steal that item and then run off. So part of that was fixed. That being said, I mean, yeah, personal loot's still an impact. I know RC loot counts, most players use that one. That's been updated for personal loot. So what you're going to see a lot of guilds doing now is, hey, this is not an upgrade. Okay, trade it to the one person. Or RC loot council now automatically checks, hey, that was not an upgrade for this person. Let's add it to the session, and then you can give it away that way. So if Midget's got a trinket that she doesn't need, well, it'll automatically pop up for her. Hey, go trade this to so and so because that's the person that we're going to give it to. But yeah, I mean, it's different, but I don't know. It's something to get used to. It impacts some players. I could see it, maybe for Mythic rating, and that's been the compromise that a lot of people are suggesting. Leave it for Mythic rating. Leave Guild Master Loot for whatever, Master Loot for Mythic guilds, because that's sort of their thing. And I mean, there's always side effects to it, whether it be the RMT trading or guild sales or gold sales or whatever. So
I don't know that we've done a lot of testing with the RC Loot Council, but one of the viewers was asking, how does the add-on know it's not an upgrade just by eye level?
When it's flagged as tradable, that's when it knows. I know we tested it a little bit earlier, at least Severus, one of my guildies, did, in an Emerald Nightmare, and it worked just fine. So, yeah, I mean...
What does that mean? What is it? So was it basing it on eye level, or was it using stats, or what does work just fine mean?
I can't recall what it was. It might have been off item level, or it might have been, whether it was an actual upgrade. But if it was tradable as not an upgrade, then it would have been popped up as tradable.
If it's tradable through personal loot, it's because it's a smaller or equal eye level to what you have.
Yeah.
That's the only rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the other point where, the trinkets, things like the Acid Injector and whatever, the Elisand Fury Warrior trinket, those trinkets shouldn't really be existing in BFA, because the secondary stats or the proc shouldn't be scaling. I know that was one of the conversations we had at PAX, where they shouldn't have OP trinkets like that, but, we'll see what happens. So...
But I mean, I wouldn't really call Catalyst Injector OP. The Warrior one, sure, they had to nerf it. And, that was kind of unique. But even from a tank perspective, I mean, there's really not many between at least Old Deer and the BFA dungeons coming out. There's not a lot of very traditional tank trinkets in terms of stam and big absorbs.
Mhm.
There's one in Old Deer, and let's just say some mechanic on Gahoon Mythic is just crucial that a tank has something like that. It makes it easier. I mean, it's a big problem if I can't get my hands on that, or maybe some third tank accidentally gets it in Heroic. And the other problem that people mentioned that I do agree with as well is, let's say it's not even an OP trinket like you're saying, Sparty, but let's just say it's a nice juicy trinket that people want, a nice damage upgrade, whatever it may be. And then Warrior A gets it, and then you do Heroic Clear the second week, and Warrior A gets the same trinket plus 5 eye level. They can't trade it.
That's right.
So the difference between them just getting that incremental 5 eye level increase, which they can't trade, and that second trinket in a huge value going to Warrior B, they can't do that. And that's a really kind of silly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And part of rating at that high level is the logistical challenges and dealing with those item level things, right? It's making the most efficient group, whether it be split runs or whatever, to make sure your group is geared as geared as possible, right? To make it quick and efficient. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it won't kill split rating. It'll disincentivize it.
Yeah.
English. But it won't kill it. I mean, you'll have people that are doing 6 split runs doing like 3 or 4 now. I mean, well, you can do 6 if you want, but there's still reasons to do it. But people think it'll kind of kill it off completely, which is definitely not true.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the high-end guilds will still be doing it without a doubt. But I mean, let's talk about the mounts. So personal loot. The other last thing we need to cover is the mounts. So the big concern was that with personal loot, these mounts would not be tradable. I know we experienced one situation in our guild where it wasn't a master loot. It was given to me, but it was not tradable for some reason. We thought it was a bug, and that might be the new incarnation of how personal loot would work. But it turns out Argus mounts are completely tradable, like Gul'dan mounts, whatever. It pops up in somebody's inventory that does not have it. At that point, it is tradable to anybody else, whether they have it or not or whatever, and it does not save to them until they finally learn it. So, but yeah, that's good.
They are tradable now.
Yeah, so it is all tradable. So I mean, it's great.
So they said it was a bug. Yeah, because that would have definitely sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got players that have been around for years, and you have players that are throwing in so much into the guild and the team, and you often want to reward these players first before you start selling mounts or do whatever. Awesome. So, a lot of this podcast, we want to talk about Sloot here, and it's all about him to make him feel good. And
well, perhaps we should introduce Sloot to those who might. I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't know who Sloot was, but perhaps we should start out with who exactly is Sloot.
He's the most hilarious guy in the MDIs, right? I mean,
well, he's definitely got better jokes than you. Isn't that how that goes?
Oof.
Wow.
Wow, feel the love. Feel the love from Midgettes.
I thought this was best in Sloot starring Sloot, not roast Sparty Smallwood.
Oh, and no, we roast Sparty a lot. That's part of my job.
Wonderful.
Oof.
But yeah, so I mean, tell us a little about yourself. What sort of got you into raiding, who you are, what you do now for anyone that's been living under a rock for the past, many years. Yeah, no, I mean, I can keep talking while you chew. It's not a problem. I mean,
we'll go ahead and let you keep eating.
Sparty,
We'll
I'll just swallow like a
talk
pelican. It's hard to find time to eat food when you stream so much. But hi, I'm Sloot, Ted. I've been playing since vanilla. I want to say like many, but not really so many these days. But I have been playing since vanilla, almost 14 years ago now. What got me into the game was actually Guild Wars 1. As at the time it was free and limited content. You could only get to level 20. It was my first discovery of MMOs, and I remember going to the local game store where my buddy was working, and that fateful day of 04, 05, whenever 04.
04,
and
yeah.
I was like, hey, when's the next Guild Wars expansion coming out? And he's like, oh, I'm not sure for a while, but have you heard of it? It was like one of those dark alley crack bum thing. Like,
how about this crack? I got some Warcraft crack for you.
And I'm like, oh no, what's that? He's like, oh, World of Warcraft is way better. He's like, but it costs $15 a month. I was like, I don't know, man. I'm like broke high school student going to college student. I was like, okay, I guess. He's like, yeah, you won't get hooked, man. He's just like, if you can't afford it or it's like whatever, you just stop. I was like, okay, and well, here I am, 14 years later.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's how I started. My first tune I ever made was a Night Elf Warrior, which I fell off the edge of Teldrassil with and didn't want to get back. So I deleted it and made a Night Elf Rogue, which ended up being ended up being my main until mid Old War, and then I got into tanking in mid Old War, and then kind of just went from there.
That's pretty recent then.
Okay.
And so you've been doing stuff for a while, whether it was playing that noob warrior, to I guess to playing a rogue for a while. When did you really get into more of the hardcore scene, and then why into tanking?
Well, I'll answer the tanking thing first.
Sure.
As a rogue, I remember there's a lot of circumstances here, but as a rogue, I remember in Sunwell, on Caligos, the first boss, he had a tail swipe and a frontal breath. And as a melee, it was extremely frustrating having a tank that didn't know how the F word to move him around. Are we allowed to swear about that?
Oh, whatever.
And he just, we got tail. It was just, one of the qualities of having a good tank is a tank that not only can position, themselves properly and make sure people don't get cleaved, but position mobs with respect to the melee that might be trying to
absolutely
melee the boss, but there's fire behind the boss, things like that. And this guy just didn't have that concept, and I was like, I bet I could do this better, and I was getting really frustrated. So then I made a prop paladin alt, which I fell in love with because Hyjal holy shield tanking for trash,
Right.
and it was amazing. And then I just kept getting to that point and kept getting to that point. And by the end of Old War, start of TOGC, I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna tank. And at that point, the guild I was in had fell apart, and we kind of branched off and made our own thing, and we were just getting our roles together. And then that was my opportunity to jump into tanking. So that's what happened there. I couldn't really tell you when I started getting hardcore, because I don't really know what the definition of hardcore is, because it's changed so much over the years.
For sure.
But every tier or expansion, it was always a little more. I always wanted a little more. I always wanted a bit more hardcore. I always applied to a higher guild. And even through Midwinter, I was in Midwinter for 5 years. I joined Midwinter. It wasn't nearly as, time commitment and hardcore rating as by the time, we were in like BRF, right, for US World First, US First, not World First, for US First, Black Hand, stuff like that. So it just, I don't know where you draw the line of hardcore, but it's just always been more and more and more, I guess.
Yeah. So when did you join Midwinter?
I joined Midwinter at the end of Wrath, so it was already kind of mid-Hallion farm, and people were doing the cycle, getting their Mimiron's Head and Invincible every week. Actually, that is the only time in World of Warcraft I've ever quit the game or taken a break. I was in a guild called Pie Chart at the time. It was the only other time I went Horde before going to Europe. And the week that I was supposed to get my Mimiron's Head and Invincible, I said, screw it, I'm done with this game. Just had some RL stuff come up. Had a very angry girlfriend at the time, and I was kind of put in the decide what you want to do scenario.
I remember that one. Yeah.
I was like, I'm done. Screw this. That's fine. But Sloot, your mounts. I'm like, I don't care. I'm never coming back to this game. 2 months later, I was back at the game, and unfortunately, by that point, the mounts were not guaranteed drops anymore. Years later, I finally got them. Farming them again on NA. But so when I came back, I was like, hey, Pie Chart, you want to do you need me back? And they just literally never even answered my email. So I applied Midwinter, and here we are.
Well, they're less. And yeah, Midwinter was definitely one of our favorite Alliance guilds on the US side. It was, I can't remember what else was running at that end. But yeah, it was Midwinter and then Blood Legion as the opposite one in terms of, back and forth between the US Goliaths. But yeah.
Yeah. To a certain extent, Blood Legion was always above us. The one time we finally beat Blood Legion was BRF. Maybe Heimel. I can't remember if we beat them in Heimel. Mm-hmm. We either beat them or got very close. And then we finally beat them in BRF, NA first and everything. And then the guild fell apart, Blood Legion. So we didn't have another opportunity to kind of go head and head, unfortunately.
Uh-huh. Awesome. So a lot of it has been changing over the number of years in terms of time commitment, and I've seen that too, whether it's going from Burning Crusade and it was, pre-nerf Muru crap and it was just perfection being played and you were playing 6-7 days a week, vanilla where it was you were spending 4-6 hours farming in order to, raid 4 or 5 more hours. And then it got into, more Wrath and the other ones. And we had EJ back then as the pinnacle of resources. But the competitive scene has really changed, more spreadsheets, more logistical nightmares, right? How have you sort of seen that competitive scene change over the years, at least since, you've been in Midwinter to where you are now?
I would say In some ways it hasn't. I think there's just more people present in these communities. And to a certain extent, communication within these communities has gone up substantially. Comparing the fact that we had to communicate through forum posts compared to Discord communities now, where people just, God damn it, cat, where people.
I love your cat. I just gotta tell you that. I just love that.
Perfect
cat.
timing.
So I think kind of technology and communication has helped it a lot, because it's much easier now to just be like, hey, let's hop in Discord together and discuss, tanking strats for this Mythic Plus or whatever it may be.
But
I
even
also do think that.
But even in terms of strats, I mean, I remember back in BC and back in the early days, guilds were not willing to share their strats. I remember Conquest, when they got banned in Molten Core, they said, here's all our strats. And that was something that came out of EverQuest too. Guilds are very protective of their strats and their information until, later on, more so in BC and Wrath, I suppose.
I mean, well, it's still the same here. I mean, well, for the guilds that are competitive, they don't share strats,
sure.
of course. But the problem is the world first race that has kind of built over the years that we know is all in all dead almost, right? You just have Method and Exorcist these days. They don't share strats. Aside them, a lot of the top 25 don't publicly share strats, except for like us because we stream or whatever. But the amount of mingling between those guilds they're still strat sharing. You have buddies in a guild that maybe killed the boss a day before you, a few hours before you, and then they're kind of like, oh, Sloot, like, if you send me some naughty pics, I'll tell you, like, you get what you want from them. And I'm just kidding about that.
Naughty cat pics, I know.
So, yeah, of course. So you get what you need to a certain extent. Of course, you don't share groundbreaking things. You're still in fun competition, and you want to get the highest rank. That kind of stuff was an absolute no-no when you're doing world first stuff. I mean, if you leak anything, if anybody gives you any info, if you're the one to say any info when you're in Method or Exorcist, like, you're out of the guild. Information intake, that's fine. Yeah, no, it was super, like, it's super, super strict. But that kind of art of raiding is just slowly,
it's a dying
died
breed.
off.
Yeah.
Because you just, the new love child in PvE is obviously Mythic Plus. Blizzard cares a lot about it. Obviously, there's a lot of, there's money involved in it now. There's support for it by Blizzard, etc. And raiding will still always be number one to Blizzard in terms of the community and the representation of PvE in World of Warcraft, which is why they're so adamant. Where are you going to get the best gear? Where are you going to get the highest eye level as raid gear? I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Mythic raiding. So they'll still always want raiding to have this perk, and many people still do raiding, and there's still a lot of fun competition in raiding. But the meta of raiding, in terms of where the majority of competition lies, has really shifted from that world first 12 to 14 hour mentality where you hide everything and you stop streaming on Twitch and you don't say a word to anyone ever, and all you do is raid and sleep. That meta has really shifted a lot into what the non-Method and Exorcist guilds are doing, more like what our guild does, or many of the top 20 guilds do, is just that 6 to 8 hour thing, which is still a lot of friggin' time.
Oh, for sure.
7 days a week, but it's like half the time of before, not to mention the amount of prep required in terms of alts, etc. It's just, people are starting to catch on that we love raiding, and Blizzard does support it, but to a certain extent, and there's no money involved. There's no return for our time.
Yep.
The glory of getting world first just isn't what it was years ago, because there's just not as much competition in it. And we still want to be competitive, but we want to, have a life kind of thing, I suppose, is what people are realizing. So
yeah, no, for sure. And again, people get older, right? We all get older. We understand that, there's other things to do. And when there's not that, I guess, that financial backing, like there are with the MDIs, it's not the same. It's not the same kind of support as it is for Mythic Pluses. Do you ever see a point where we might see some of that support? I mean, it's tough, because watching raids for 6 to 8 hours is not the same as watching an MDI, right? Your attention span can be that much shorter with the dungeons. I know when I was watching the MDIs over the weekends, it was okay, a couple hours here and there, and that's totally fine. But when a kill might happen at any time, it's tough. It's tough to see that 14 hours of progression, whatever it was, if, let's say, it was to be streamed. But do you see that support ever coming in, or do you see it growing at any point? I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so, because there's so much focus and success on M plus for various reasons, including the kind of coordination that's needed for 5-man versus 25-man.
Oh, for sure.
Or sorry, 20-man, actually. I'm saying 25-man.
Yes.
Yeah, back in the day. but I don't want to say it's impossible. I just don't see that being the case. I see them growing the MDI and Mythic Plus more in that direction. I don't think rating's going anywhere by any means. I don't think they're going to stop rating in 9.0 or 10.0 or whatever it may be. I think it'll still be strong, and it'll still have its values of, you know, the best gear because it requires the most coordination and group effort and stuff. But, you know, the reality is just I don't think they'll do it. And even, well, two reasons. And I've actually talked to them about this for what it's worth, like, you know, backstage, the MDI, you know, Zorbrix and stuff. There's just it's very hard to market it, and especially in terms of excitement levels, right? And even in the MDI, you know, you have a bit of lull once in a while, nothing's going on in the dungeon, maybe both teams just wipe. You know, that's where you jab a couple jokes, the casters have some fun, etc. But in raiding, I mean, there's generally no excitement outside of we're getting close to the kill, we got a new phase, or we get the kill. And for the harder bosses, I mean, you saw like that takes hundreds of attempts for like Agrima. You know, it took like 2-3 days or whatever. I find it hard to believe that there would be a sustained viewer count for that kind of stuff. People would tune in for the kill if they can. They'd want to see a highlight of the kill, and that's it. You know, that isn't to say that if Method was like, "Hey guys, we're streaming," you know, in Old Deer. And by the way, I don't think that's out of the question. I think they might like pull out that kind of surprise or whatever, because they're an esports organization, right?
Absolutely.
They have to realize that. Yeah, it's their brand. They have to realize that financially, it's way more intelligent for them to stream, and people are going to tune in because they're the best guild in the world, etc. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're like, "Hey, we're streaming Old Deer." There's two problems with that. One is, you know, it's their brand, they're number one. They don't want to tarnish their name for World First. So if they stream, it puts them at a disadvantage to Exorcist. But if Exorcist stops rating, they're going to stream 100%.
Oh, for sure.
And then the other one is like, okay, well, if you're going to stream, are you going to drop your hourly competition to what the other 30 guilds in the whatever top 30 are doing? Or are you just going to kind of default win it because you still rate double their hours, you know? And would that really be fun? Would people want to see that? I think they'd get a lot of viewership until things started to slow down, but not as much as people think. You know, there's a lot of people that think it would just be crazy. And in the same vein as you were mentioning with Blizzard, and people would love it and go nuts, and they'd have tens, hundreds, thousands of viewers like watching it. Like, no, come on. Like, it's just, let's be honest, like you get pretty sick of, you know, and a lot of rating isn't fast-paced stuff that you see in the MDI, and sometimes slower-paced stuff in the MDI, or even in PvP where it's fast-paced. A lot of rating is just like, hey, what went wrong in that pool? Well, let's discuss this for 15 minutes. Okay, I got to go to the bathroom now. There's somebody at the door. My pizza just got here. You
That's
know,
so true.
like,
absolutely.
Right. There's so much downtime in rating too. It's just not something that's exciting to watch. And there's people that would like that for sure. There's people that are, you know, want to see that strat development, but I just don't think it's something that's marketable. What is marketable potentially in the future is making like a documentary out of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that stuff needs to be exciting too. It can't be like a one-horse race.
For sure. And I mean, they've done some documentaries in the past where it was, whether it's the rating one, I can't remember. I know I was, they asked me to film parts for one of them, but yeah, there was the, what was it? What was that documentary?
The 10-year one?
Yeah, the 10-year one. That's the one. So I mean, that kind of stuff was fun. They did some other ones through some other places. I think it was a couple of the rating guilds, right? Was it Method that they filmed for some of it? I can't remember. I remember watching something.
Maybe it's just
yeah, it's not the same. It's not marketable. It's not as exciting, or it's not as sexy. And you know, whereas MDIs can be.
It's just the way esports developed. I was on stage at BlizzCon for the last two live raids there, Midwinter versus Method.
Yep.
2 years in a row. I was there for the last two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the way esports has grown, and the patience of players, and how professional and official they've made it. And they build custom caster desks and setups and stuff like that. It just kind of fell behind everything. It's not, rating is just not an esport. That's just not how it works, you know?
Okay, so let's talk about MDIs a little bit. I mean, they've grown substantially since the first one. Production values are much higher. You know, you mentioned those custom caster desks. Like it's incredible. I mean, it's super fun to watch. Partly because of, you know, guys like you and Jack and Trekkie and Nagura and everybody else that's out there. And Rich obviously, and like it's awesome. People love it. People, you know, love the memes and the jokes, and it's a lot of fun. People are cheering on their favorite region, their favorite guild, or their favorite Method team, whatever it is. It's exciting. So tell us a little bit about the MDIs. You know, what sort of goes behind the scenes there, and what you really enjoyed about them.
Well, you're gonna have to narrow it down what goes behind the scenes because there's a lot. I mean, what I enjoyed about them personally is finally, after all these years, being able to see PVE, whether it's rating or whatever, just grow and make a place for itself, and finally, after all this time, see something that is encouraged and funded and supported by Blizzard.
Hmm.
You know, of course, they support rating and the fact that they develop it, they'll hot fix it, they monitor the world first race as much as they can, or all top progression guilds as much as they can. They want to fix it, they want it to be fun, and they want it to be a great experience. But that pales in comparison to money, dev support, eye level tuning for dungeons, cameramen or observers for the matches, etc. So that's, I suppose, the main thing, just being able to see it flourish and being able to have, to be kind of just fed that confidence that, a lot of people, there was always that theory crafting or theorizing of, I bet PvE would get so much viewership. I bet people would love PvE, and then people would scoff at it and say, no way, it's PvE. So it's really kind of comforting to see that it's done quite successfully the first time, and the second time they did it, it blew it out of the water. I mean, people really actually do love this stuff for PvE, so it's humbling to see.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and I love the passion you have for the PvE, and it's you see the scene that you've been behind for years and years and years, and to finally prove people wrong or others right. And yeah, this has been successful. It's been amazing, and people love watching it. Like it's great to finally see that backing behind PvE and what the MDIs have been. So going into the MDIs. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, we should let Midgettes talk.
Something. We're gonna let me talk. I want to know, Sloot, because it had to have been some sort of decision why you chose to shoutcast instead of compete. And is there competition in the future for you? Because I'm really curious.
Since someone's backing up outside, it was a very tough decision. I'm the first guy they approached when the program was still in its infancy at the start, like 2-3 months before they got Jack and the other guys. It was a very hard decision because this is just my bread and butter, right? This is what I've done for so long, competitive PvE. But when it really came down to it, and there's gonna be jokes about money and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, sure, money is good. But the main thing really was, the question is, because I'm so passionate about PvE and growing it and wanting to see it flourish and develop, like we said, which position put me in the best position to be able to support that program and help it grow?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's just no comparison. Being able to cast and being in the back end of things and helping make decisions and giving suggestions and criticism, constructive where it may be needed, and just doing what I can internally and on the backside to help grow the program. And then, of course, my own performance with casting and try to make it entertaining is a way more prominent position than competing and potentially having that glory of winning and getting the money. It's still, I mean, deep down in my heart, I would still love to do that. And who knows, maybe in the future I might one time. It's kind of weird to think that I would not cast one, though, because I'm so embedded in it now. But it's just, I'm in a much more prominent position to be able to help the program however I can, if I can, casting and being part of the kind of internal stuff rather than external.
But yeah. I want it both. Because I love you shoutcasting. You're wonderful. But I would love to see you compete.
I'm not allowed.
I'm sure you're not.
I gotta choose.
We should have a best in Sloot, Mythic Plus run and just see how you do with it.
Oh, and yeah, you know what? I think that right decision was made, and you're right. I mean, it's the prominence for the PvE scene. How can you benefit the PvE scene the most? And yeah, it could have been, hey, you've got your awesome personality, and you could have won, sure. But at the same time, you can be so much more impactful with the game as a whole, right? I mean, yeah, as high-end raiders, you give feedback, and you fix some stuff, and you test things on beta, but to have such an impact with dungeons that everybody's doing, and to really showcase the PvE scene for what it could be and more, I mean, that's got to be such a fulfilling feeling. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's honestly what it is. It's just the satisfaction of being able to do that. And I know most of the casters are in the same boat about that. you know, who knows in future. Maybe they'll have like a winners versus casters thing one day. We'll see.
Oh, hey, that's an awesome idea.
Right?
So what are you thinking about BFA's Mythic Pluses? What sort of feedback do you have on that?
Oh, I mean, I've been doing a lot of that. It's fun because, well, it's fun for two reasons. One is just I love, and this I guess is part of the bigger picture of, you know, people are always asked, Sloot, are you excited for the expansion? I've heard bad things, I've heard good things, etc. For me, an expansion could end up being the worst expansion ever made by any video game ever. But the launch of an expansion is so sugar-coated for me that it could be horrible 2 years down the road. I don't care. But the launch of an expansion is so fun. It's so good. New zones, everybody starts at crap gear, and you know, you're getting your first blue and your first epics, and that grind out the gate, and everybody's grinding, in this case, Azerite power. And that's a lot of fun to me. Super, super fun. So it's fun in that sense that, you know, these are new dungeons. People are still routing and exploring and learning and what's dangerous and what's not dangerous and reporting bugs. Of course, everyone should be doing that. So that's really fun. But on the other hand, it's, you know, I've gone pretty ham on it, and it's give me that hunger for competition and fun, pushing some of the hierarchies, because the meta of I actually talked about this today on stream, but the meta of the way the beta is, just because of obviously you're not in the best gear and player power over the course of 2 expansions hasn't crept up to the level that it did in Legion. You don't have the whole Blood DK runs in, AoE grips half the instance, and you kill it within 5 seconds so nobody dies before it kills you kind of thing, you know? You actually, like, things hurt the tanks really badly. The meta is completely wide open. There's so many viable, and because trash is living long, and mechanics, they've really implemented mechanics that matter, because they will kill you. You have to interrupt, you have to stun, you have to do this thing on the boss, you have to do this, that all these different, and the seasonal affix infested, you know, there's all these different class combinations that are working really well. And I've had kind of the opportunity to see that, because every day, you know, I don't have a dedicated 5-man, so I have a few guys that run with me often, but you know, we see new classes, new specs, new people all the time. So it's really cool to see what advantages they bring to the table. You go, oh, we don't have but look, we have like a frost mage now, and you know, it helps. You know, they're so good at helping kite for necrotic for the tank, as an example. So it's very cool to see and to kind of build that. And I really hope to see more of this maintenance of dungeons, where it's a lot like more mechanically important and intense, and things like, you know, interrupts and dispels are very important, and you can't just pull half the instance together. But a lot of that's just going to depend on power creep. You know, if by the end of the expansion we just get into somebody that's players that are just so overpowered again that they do pull half the instance because mechanics only matter as long as the mobs live, then we'll be there. But for now, the reality is that, you know, here we are, things matter a lot, and I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, I know a lot of that was in Wrath, where it was just face roll dungeons by the end of it. But going into BFA and the dungeons, I mean, from the ones that I've done, it seems that they have Mythic Plus in mind when they're designing some of these dungeons, whether it's trash placement or bridge placement and different paths you can take. What's your take on that one?
You're absolutely right. You know, people kind of would meme about Legion dungeons and haha MDI ready, but built with MDI in mind. MDI as a concept didn't even exist when Legion launched, and their dungeons, it was an afterthought, seeing that how popular Mythic Plus was. And there was a few people in the community behind the scenes like myself that went forward and wanted to start something like GCD TV had for PvP that eventually embedded into Blizzard. We wanted to do the same thing, but obviously for dungeons you would need Blizzard support, so you have to approach Blizzard and say, hey, look, I have this idea, but we need observers, and we need you guys to somehow tune the eye level in dungeons, otherwise it won't be fair, of course. And eventually they said just chill, and then they're like, you know what, we'll do it. We're like, oh, okay. So the dungeons in Legion were in no way planned for MDI, but now, of course, seeing the success of MDI and seeing the success of Mythic Plus, you're absolutely right. I mean, it definitely seems like, you know, they're on that more. I mean, are there going to be bugs and stuff? Of course there are. That we're in beta right now. We're discovering tons of bugs. But I know they're working pretty diligently to make sure that doesn't happen. But the reality of it is, I mean, it's a PvE environment. A year down the road in Freehold, we're probably still going to find some crazy bug. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And then we'll just remake the dungeon.
Yeah. We'll just remake the dungeon. So what are you thinking about? You've played all the tanks on beta?
Yeah. I've actually played.
Okay, so I want to ask the question that everybody always asks: which one's the best tank?
They're all the best tank is the one you enjoy playing most.
There you go. Good answer.
Okay, now on a serious note, what are you seeing out there from all of the tanks? What are you plus and minus?
I mean, I could write like an autobiography on that stuff right now, but I mean, it's just very generally speaking, because I answer this all the time, is I feel like paladins, demon hunters, and monks are the top half of the tanks at the moment, generally. But you have to consider, like we mentioned earlier, raid versus mythic plus, and how you playing the game, because if you're just kind of playing casually, they're all fine. And there's a debate around DK right now, for instance. Some people are very for it, thinks it's great, some people are really not very happy with it. So it's tough to say. It's just everybody's opinion is just limited to their own experiences and word of mouth. I mean, I certainly haven't re-leveled all six tanks to 120, geared the hell out of them and played them for 5 hours, a day each, kind of thing. That would be 30 hours, but I haven't played them excessively every day. So things like, bear for me, I mean, I've played so much bear in my lifetime. Substantially, it hasn't changed. I've kept up with its changes. I played it a ton in alpha, but once beta hit and the character wipe went away, I mean, I kind of just CBA leveling 6 characters to 120, So I know how bear is. I kept a note on its changes. We saw how it was in raid testing. I've seen people play it. I've seen how people feel about it, what they think in its tuning. And, based on that, you kind of extrapolate how it would be in Mythic Plus and in raiding. And I mean, bear is kind of, Baron and Warrior are kind of, pooped on a lot right now. But a lot of the vast experience right now is in Mythic Plus. And yeah, Bear and Warrior really aren't the best. But you translate bear into a raid environment, and bear is just kind of, based on their design, one of those safe tanks, mistake friendly, high, from a healer perspective, Sparty.
Yeah.
High health, gets healed for more, smooths damage well. So they'll be just fine in Old Deer. You'll probably see a bunch of people playing bear in Old Deer. I don't think they'll reach the same level of OP, part of that being their utility, which got nerfed, as you saw in like Kill Jaden and TOS. But you'll see a few bears running around and be like, oh my god, everyone said bears suck, and now they're in raiding. But you just have to be able to distinguish between the two. Yeah. But certainly in Mythic Plus, they're not very,
Yeah, and it's important to know. I mean, yeah, it's how they are right now. But again, there's gonna be multiple tuning passes, pendulum swings, both ways, and it comes down to what Sloot said earlier. Just play what you enjoy. That'll be totally fine, and they're all gonna be viable, whether it's a Mythic Plus setting or in a raid. It doesn't matter. You just play what you enjoy.
Yeah.
And so going into, I guess, thoughts of BFA as a whole. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Azurite. Where are you? Where do you sort of stand on the whole Azurite thing? I know we had issues with Legion, but yeah, let's talk about Azurite a little bit before we wrap up.
Okay, I'll say this as
constructively
nicely
as you can
possible. I think that if I were to summarize my thoughts, because I've had a few rants about the same thing a few times on stream. And obviously, I'm very in with Blizzard, so I'm not going to bash them or anything. But, you got to give criticism where criticism's due. I feel like the system was coveted as the super new system, and it was meant to combine legendaries and tier and be phenomenal and add a massive amount of depth and character customization and variation to your character. And I feel like the concept of Azurite was fantastic. I feel that they're on the right idea, and I like the way the neck kind of, they built the neck in such a way that it never becomes irrelevant, right? Next raid tier, you have to get to 40 and then 60, whatever it'll be. The neck is always relevant. You don't reach that kind of paragon status, so to speak. So I think the concept and everything was really good, but I think the delivery was super lacking. It's just, it depends what side of the fence you lie on. Are you on the pessimistic side, or are you on the optimistic side? But the fact that you have these super coveted pieces of gear that are supposed to customize your character, and then each spec has really 1 to 2 choices for the outer ring, and then on top of it, 3 of your 6 Azurites traits on average are just crap. I mean, you would never even consider it, even under some crazy circumstance, at least in the world of tanking. This is what I've seen. That's a problem. And it kind of speaks to me that the pessimist in me says that they ran out of time. They didn't have time to implement this properly, and they're trying to feed this as this is the system and this is what we planned all along. The optimist in me is hoping that maybe there's a bit of combination of that along with Blizzard taking their usual stance of starting things very reserved, seeing how they develop and building from there and fixing it. But it's a bit baloney to me that you have a piece of gear where the outer ring, where there's 4 choices, 2 of them are already scuffed by different specs and they're just useless, right? I mean, why am I seeing, you know, as a blood decay, let's say, why am I seeing an unholy and a frost spec that are completely dependent on abilities that are for unholy or only for frost in my tree? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. The way the Azerite gear should have been is the outer ring is, you know, the generic zone option, which I thought was really cool, you know, Vol'dun sands and all that kind of stuff. And then the other 3 should be blood decay things, right? Where's my choice? I don't get it. I don't have a choice. You're forcing me into a neutral or a class specific one. And then you go to the inner ring, and then the 3 options there are either something related to healers, something related to DPS, like it's a role thing, or something related to tanks. As a prot paladin, I could say, okay, you know, I can actually kind of do the healer one, and I could do the damage one as a tank because I want to be more offensive. But the reality is you're kind of forced into it, especially as a DPS, like a rogue. A rogue's not going to take the healing one. A rogue's not going to take the tank one. So where's the choice there? You're forced again. And then after that, you're forced to one of 2 choices, which are just kind of generic, you know, a little bubble or a little self-heal. And then it's 5 eye level. So, you know, the system that they kind of put forth as this massive, so many options system is really, really cut short by the fact that they're putting other specs in the tree, which leads me to believe, like I said, they ran out of time. And when they should have had 18 prop paladin things, they had maybe only 6.
Yep.
And of those 6, it really feels like they were at a meeting and they said, okay, guys, your homework is you have to make 6 specs for prop paladin. And then they ran out of time and they're like, crap, we only have 4. Here, give them some crappy ones, you know? Like you just
give the
throw
illusion of
something
choice
on there and then they have choice, the illusion of choice. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's my kind of gripe with the system.
Yeah, you know, I would agree. I mean, philosophically, it sounds like a really awesome idea. It's a combination of, you know, what potential legendaries were and our artifacts, and now it's got glimpses of another like Crucible, which people weren't huge fans of because it was just, you know, you have sort of choice, sort of not choice, and a lot of useless ones. But the execution was potentially a little lacking. I mean, if you had more of these tank ones or Holy Paladin specific ones or whatever it was, it'd be a lot more meaningful, I think, rather than just, okay, well, this is the cookie cutter that you're going to go down, and that's sort of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I do take hopefully some confidence to see that. I mean, if you look at the systems that were put forth in Legion, you know, legendaries, AP, artifact knowledge, that kind of stuff, Blizzard really did take feedback to mind and really did change most of these things for the best by the end of the expansion. The model of artifact power and farming it that we have now, and the kind of educational element of it that was drawn over the entirety of the expansion that we're now starting BFA with, you can really tell they listened and they tried to make it better. And it really did turn out quite well, in my opinion, in the long run. So I'm hoping that they kind of do the same thing with Azerite gear. They listen to the feedback when things settle down after launch a bit more. They really kind of add a bit more workforce behind Azerite and try to develop it a bit more for the raid postal gear, you know?
For sure. So as we sort of run out of time here for our show, and I mean, thank you for being here so long. You know, you've been in MDIs and in raiding for years, and MDIs are now the big thing, and there's a lot of passion behind it. If you were to only go down one route now, would you go down raiding or MDI? Do you have a favorite baby? You got a Sophie's choice here.
But that's you're basically asking, do I want to play World of Warcraft or do I want to cast it?
Well, I mean, part of it is out of your enjoyment too, right? I mean, what would you enjoy more? Let's say the casting aspect was out of it, right? Or maybe a small part of it. What would you choose? What would you stick with your rating, or would you do MDIs? Or Mythic
If I had
Pluses,
to choose
rather.
between competitive rating and competitive Mythic Plus,
Yeah.
it's hard to say, man. That's a tough choice. I mean, I'll always love rating, but the big difference between the two is the kind of support that comes from Blizzard that we talked about. I mean, if we lived in a world where rating was fed the same level of support and competition and tuning and, you know, gear quality and the money prizes and stuff, I'd probably stick with the rating, because I do think, I mean, from experience as well, the amount of coordination and et cetera, that's needed for raiding in a 20-man group and strategy and 10-minute long fights and one slip up on Mythic week 1 for a lot of the second half usually of rate of bosses, and you're dead, and that's it, right? And there's just a lot going on. Mythic Plus is intense in its own sense for sure. It's got a lot of different kinds of strategy in it, but the level of coordination and things like raid leading and just mechanical difficulty, of course, of a dungeon boss versus a raid boss, I mean, just the way the game's designed is smaller. So I think my heart would lie with raiding, but we don't live in a world where raiding supported the way Mythic Plus is. So
Awesome. Midges, any last questions for Sloot?
Yes. Where's the black cat?
Asking the important ones.
And I love your new Sloot icons. I think what we need from you, Sloot, though, is for all of our viewers, those people under a rock who don't know where you are and how to get a hold of you. Where can they find you in the interwebs?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Sloot or at Slootbag on Twitter. Those are my homes. So you can just drop by there.
Fantastic. Sorry, go ahead, Midgets.
We really appreciate you stopping by. We could have asked you another hour's worth of questions easily.
Okay, but just one more. Yeah. So we always want to leave our viewers with, one parting word, one piece of advice, to really wrap this whole thing up. And with the passion that you have towards PvE and the success story that you have been, if someone wants to get into MDIs or Mythic Pluses or get into, streaming like you have or high level rating, whatever it is, what piece of advice would you give this potential person?
Good question. There's so many different areas you just mentioned. I think one of it is just consistency and being able to problem solve and kind of just, generically speaking, keep at it kind of thing. Because you're just going to be met with so much adversity. If it's PvE, trying to climb the ranks for finding a good Mythic Plus group or rating or whatever it may be, you're going to be met with adversity that you don't have enough experience. There's a lot of kind of a-holes on the internet and toxicity, and it's just the way it is. But eventually there are good groups of people out there, like this community here, and there's just tons of communities that are really good and will help you out, and you just got to find the right ones that you're comfortable and that will help build you to the level you want. And of course, practice. In the world of streaming, I mean, again, consistency is kind of the same thing. The world of streaming is a bit different from PvE. That's more of like a business thing. But I think just consistency and associating yourselves with like a positive environment for the most part.
Awesome. That's fantastic, and I think that's a great way to wrap our show. But thank you guys, everyone, for watching. Have a good night. Be excellent to each other, and as always, live your life heroically. Have a fantastic evening. Good night.
Thanks for having me.